the first of several forms we're going to be doing on art this year. And we usually do 3. We added a couple more. This is a brand new form that we're doing this year. And obviously, we're going to be talking about the origins of art. One thing that we believe is that art is a great way to learn history. It is through art that we can learn a lot about what human beings like, what they desired, what they valued. Art reflects history. And we as human beings have been making art for a long time. This sound that you're hearing right now is being played on the oldest musical instrument ever found. About 10 years ago in a cave in Slovenia, they found in a cave a bone of a cave bear. And in that bone was a femur bone. There were 3 holes drilled on one side and 1 hole drilled on the bottom. And that led people to believe that this has got to be some type of musical instrument. And so people from all over the world, musical experts, were trying to figure out, after they reconstructed it, how to play it. And there was a professor who figured it out, and this is him playing the music right now. So this may be much like sounds that early humans created when they created music. Probably before that, they used drums. You know, one of the more ancient types of music is drumming. And so perhaps drumming came first. But one of the questions we have to ask ourselves is, what is art? And it's something that we do and have done all our lives. The moment you started school, preschool, kindergarten, the first thing that you did, the very first thing that you did is you made art. You finger painted, probably some of you ate the paint. You eventually used crayons, and then later, you maybe outlined your hand. You guys remember doing this around November? You outlined your hand, you put a couple eyeballs where your thumb is, you turned your fingers into feathers, you added a few legs, and you made a turkey. And you're like so excited. And you bring it home, and your parents are so proud, they put it in the art museum of your house, the refrigerator, you're like, turkey. You're like so excited because you made something. We kind of recognize art when we see it. Like this. Now, probably all of us in here would say, yeah, that constitutes, that's art. Yeah, no doubt. Does anyone know what this is? Yeah, very good. It's the Sistine Chapel in Rome, painted by Michelangelo about 500 years ago. He laid on his back, about 25 feet up in the air, about 2 feet from the ceiling, 18 hours a day to paint. And he depicted scenes from the Bible. This is in the center of the ceiling. It shows God touching, just about to touch Adam's finger to give him life. All right? We say, hey, that's art. I can't do that. I'd like to, but I can't. I like painting. I like doing various types of art, like this. What type of art is this? How many of you are in photo? Yeah, take a photo. Do you consider photo art? Yeah. All right? So photography is a type of art. Except that this isn't a photo. Well, it is technically. It's a photo of a drawing. All right? This artist draws using number 2 pencils. And so this is a drawing. It's called photorealistic art. This guy uses pencils to make art that looks like photographs. It's pretty amazing. Our last forum of the year, we're going to look at, modern art, especially the hyper-realistic, photorealistic art like this. This is not a photograph. This is a drawing done with ballpoint pens. The same kind of pens that you use to write with, different colored ballpoint pens. This guy makes drawings that look like photographs. It's pretty amazing. As is this. Yeah. It's called The Spooning Couple. I know some of you are thinking, man, I wish I had that in my house. That's nice. That is really, whew. What kind of art do you think this is? It's a sculpture. Yeah, it's a sculpture. The guy, his name is Ron Muick. He creates realistic sculptures. All of the hair on his sculptures and the clothes, those are real clothes, it's cloth. But the hair is either real human hair or it's synthetic hair, and he puts each strand of hair in individually on the guy's legs, on the head, and so forth. I mean, it's that realistic, but you don't get an idea of how big this thing is. Or I should say, how small it is. Some of his sculptures are really small. Some of them are huge that take up an entire room. But they all have one thing in common. They look real. They look real. So that's a type of art that's around today. During the course of this year, we're going to be looking at all types of art. We're going to be focusing on different eras. We are going to be looking at, next time, Greek and Roman art. Then we're going to be looking at Renaissance art, then art of the Enlightenment and the Romantic periods. Then we're going to look at 20th century art. So we're going to take this journey through art history to learn a little bit about ourselves through art. But it kind of starts here, when human beings were no different than us. Same brain capacity. They were, in all essence, us, but they lived thousands and thousands of years ago. Walked into caves to put these images on the cave walls. Why did they do this? We're not sure. But one thing is for sure, this art was made with a purpose. And our job today is to try and figure out what that purpose is. We're going to first look at cave art, and then you're going to look individually at 4 examples of prehistoric art and try and figure out what motivated people to make this art. To introduce this all, I put together a video. In the middle of that first page, there's a box. There's like 3 questions there that ask you how long have human beings been around? When did human beings start making art, and what was the first type of art? It wasn't this, most likely. This is what has lasted, but we may have made things before that. Listen to what is stated about that. So here's a little introduction to what we're going to be talking about today.
Art is all around us, everywhere we go. In every city on this planet of ours. Of course, art is in our museums. All over the world, human beings have art on display. But that is not all. It's in our houses of worship. It's in our government buildings. Our schools. It punctuates our public places, both officially and unofficially. It's even in our commercials.
The most legendary name in paint is now at Lowe's.
What is his name?
Oh, it's HGTV Home by Sherwin-Williams.
Is he more famous than me?
It's the name everyone wants on their wall.
Well, now there's room for all of us.
Sure.
Back to the happy tree?
But nothing looks better on ceilings either.
Come again?
So if you're looking for the most legendary name in paint...
What?
I said if you're...
I can't hear you.
Never mind. HGTV Home by Sherwin-Williams is now at Lowe's.
But art is not something we as human beings have always created. In fact, art is a relatively new thing. Relatively. Let's say this field represents all of human history. Our species, Homo sapiens, have been on this planet about 150,000 years or so. Let's say each yard represents 1,500 years in the human timeline. So, when did human beings start creating art? Let's take a look. So when did human beings start making art? About right here at the 26th yard line, approximately 40,000 years ago. Now, no one knows why we started making art at this point, but one thing is for sure, we've been making it ever since. For 100,000 years, human beings did not make art. But then something happened. In what historians call the creative explosion, human beings began making art. Now, no one knows exactly what the first art was, probably body art like jewelry, tattoos, most likely. But then, 35,000 years ago, human beings stepped into caves like this and created something spectacular. This is the cave of Altamira, located in northern Spain. It was first discovered in 1880. It was the first cave art that had ever been discovered. People didn't believe it was real. Many thought it was a hoax. But soon more and more caves were discovered, and we started getting a better idea about the creative impulses of early humans. We know more about how this art was created than we know the reasons why. Just think about it. Early humans came deep into these caves. In fact, so deep that probably nobody ever saw these images. They had to bring their own lighting, their own scaffolding that they had to build to paint on the ceiling. And then they created art. Who knows, maybe it's the same impulses that drive us to doodle, draw, and paint. Maybe early humans are not too different from ourselves.
So let's take a look at some of that early art made by early humans. This all comes to us from an age that we call the Paleolithic age. Paleo means old, lithic means stone. This is the old Stone Age that began about 2 million years ago, when there was this creature that wasn't quite us. His name was Homo habilis, and he started making stone tools. Eventually, 150,000 years ago, modern humans appeared. That's us. They were no different in brain size, and it was basically modern human beings. And then they were here for about 100,000 years before they began making art, which was about 40,000 years ago when they first started stepping into these caves. And the images that they painted are found in caves all over the world. All over the world. Nearly every continent except Antarctica. And these caves are deep and hard to get to. And it's not like they painted these right in the entrances to the caves. They went deep down into the caves. Sometimes these images are huge and they're high on the walls. One of the most famous is the Cave of Lascaux in France. You're going to be looking at some of those images. But you'll find images like this on the wall. You know, looks like cattle or something. But interestingly, this image was painted over in earlier ones. They went into these caves and sometimes they painted over the art of other people. That's kind of weird. There's a lot of horses. Horses, in fact, are very, very common. Perhaps one of the most common images found in caves are horses. And this is these portraits of horses. There's like 6 of them in a row. And they're pretty cool to see. This happens to be my favorite. Some dude about 25,000 years ago went into the Cave of Lascaux to paint this, a horse that looks like it's on steroids. It's got the big neck, the tiny head, the stubby legs. It's running through a field. Yeah, and so they stylized their art. They stylized it, which is pretty cool. In fact, almost all of the art found in caves are of animals. Probably about 90 to 98% of the images are of animals. There are some symbols scattered throughout the world. No one knows what they mean. And very rarely will you find an image of a human being. They did not necessarily spend a lot of their time drawing images of humans, mainly animals. And we have to be asking ourselves as we go through this, why? Why did they go into caves and paint these images? But some of these images are high on the ceiling. So they had to bring in fire so they could see. They had to bring in all of the supplies. They had to bring in wood and, supplies to build ladders and scaffolding to get up there high on the walls. But they did something pretty spectacular, though. They left their handprints. A lot of them. These handprints are all over the world. It's as if human beings are leaving their signature in the age before writing, basically saying, I was here. And based on the handprints, they know that some of these artists were men, some of them were women. And so that brings us to a question. Why did they do it? And how did they do it? So what we are going to be looking at. Everyone. We are going to be looking at, perhaps, some of the tools that they used when they went down into caves. Looking at the pigment and the stuff on the walls, we can kind of tell that they sometimes used tools. They used brushes. No brushes have been found because a brush like this is not going to last thousands of years. I made this. This is simply a piece of wood. It's a stick with some horsehair. I put horsehair here, and I wrapped it in animal sinew. Sinew is kind of the waxy, stringy stuff that attaches muscle to bone, which they had plenty of. And so they just wrapped that there, and so you've got a really nice paintbrush. They may have also done it with feathers. They could take a feather, or 2 or 3, and they could attach it, the same way. kind of see here the animal sinew right there holding the feather. So they had tools. Then the question is, well, what did they use for paint? What did they use for pigment? And what do you think they used for paint? It's not like they could go into the store. What do you think they used? Blood. Blood. A lot of people say blood. Yeah, they cut themselves and they wiped it all over the walls. Or animal blood. You know, maybe they tried that out, but they would have found it wouldn't last. Because blood is organic, and it'll eventually decompose, bacteria will eat it, and it'll be gone. Same with berries. Same with leaves or flowers. Anything that is organic in nature is not going to last. So they had to find pigment in other places. And one of the first pigments that they used was easy to find. It's burnt wood left over from fire. It's basically the same stuff that's in your pencils. It's not lead in your pencils. It's graphite, which is compressed charcoal for the most part. And you could take one of these things, and you could go up to a wall, and you can paint. Oh. I'm going to making a horse. My horse is smiling. It's got eyelashes. There. But I've just drawn with just a little block of charcoal. See, my fingers are all dirty. How do I turn this, though, into paint? How do I leave my signature on that beautiful painting of my horse? How do I do it? How? All right, well, let's stop there. Okay, crushed it down. Good. So I've got a flat rock here. It's my tool, flat rock, and a tool that can crush. So what I do is I put the charcoal there, and I press down to kind of make this into a powder. You can break off other pieces there. The problem, though, is if I'm just going to put, it's not going to work. It's not going to stay on the brush. How do I turn this into paint? How?
Put it in your hand.
What?
Put it in your hand.
Okay, but how does it become paint?
Over your hand.
Oh, just roll it around? It's just going to get my hands dirty. It's not going to do anything but make it more powdery. What? And water? I could do that. But the problem with water, water will make a nice little paste out of this. But when water dries, it evaporates. And then this turns to powder again, and it'll just flake off the wall. I need to have something that's kind of like glue that's going to hold this together once it dries. What? Honey, perhaps. The problem with honey, it's going to attract bugs and they're going to eat it. You all of us, have something that has viscosity and is able to hold things together. Spit. Yeah, spit. Yeah, saliva. Now, I could stand here, I guess, and just spit onto this rock. It's going to take me a while to get enough spit to make this work, so you're going to have to bear with me, okay? Just going to... Or I could call my friends, Ugg, Grug, and Doug, my caveman friends, and say, hey, you guys mind coming over? I'm going to make some art. I need your spit. Spit into a bucket. I don't have to. I can do it myself. Right? I could do it very easily, as a matter of fact. Now, let me just set up my cave. All right. Good. All right. I could just take this stuff, put it in my mouth, and chew it. I could do it. Should I do it? Odds? Odds.
1 out of 2.
Yeah. Kind of hungry. Do it. Takes a while. Gotta fill it up. Tastes like chicken. It does. Gotta fill it up again to get the saliva flowing. That's starting. Oh, this is gonna be some good paint, I can tell. See? I think I need more. I'm going to do my Miley Cyrus licking the wrecking ball impersonation. All right, you guys ready? Woo! Getting there. I'm making some kick-ass paint right now. This is going to be awesome paint. Look. There we go. Yeah. All right. I'm going to leave my handprint now. I'm going to turn myself into a human spray paint can. Here we go. I've got so much paint going on. I could paint now for hours, but I'm not going to do that. It's a fountain. I have to empty this. Is this fifth period?
Yeah.
I've been spitting in this for 5 periods.
Oh my God.
That's how they did it. And they know because they analyzed the spray pattern. And they know that it was projected out. And they can tell that it most likely was done by the human mouth. There are other theories that they use straws and things like that, but the most common theory is by using their hands and their mouths and taking that paint, taking the charcoal. Now here's the thing. It's not going to hurt you, and in fact, it's actually good for you. This has cleaned my teeth better than a toothbrush and fluoride toothpaste. So if you ever get stuck in the wilderness, take some charcoal every day and just chew it and spit it out. My teeth, by the time I'm done for the day, are going to be whiter than if I bought those whitening toothpaste and those whitening strips. It actually helps breath too because it absorbs all that stuff. So my mouth will actually be cleaner at the end of the day than any of your mouths. Just don't swallow it. But of course, that's not the only type of art that existed. And what you are going to be doing, and this will be something that will be collected, you're going to be looking at 4 examples of prehistoric art. And each of them correspond to the QR codes on your sheet. And the QR codes there, and over there, and over there. So you can get up and you can move around. Work together on this. I've got about 10 minutes or so to kind of go through, look at the images, and just jot down 5 characteristics. A characteristic is just a description, something about it. Like how big it is, where it is found, what is it, how old is it, why was it used, and really that's what we're going to do in the last 5 minutes. Last 5 minutes we're going to discuss why human beings did this. Why did they create art in the first place? Okay, and you're going to base it on what you've read. Okay? All right, let's get to it. All right, it looks like most of you are just about done, if not done altogether. That's some pretty interesting works of art from many, many years ago. What we have to do is kind of think about what all this stuff means. Why did we, as human beings, began, making art? Now, with the video that we saw at the beginning of the forum, what was probably the first type of art? Remember what that guy up there said? What? No, not the Bible.
Cave drawings.
No, before cave drawings even. Body paint, body art. Such as tattoos. Tattoos, human beings have been tattooing themselves for a long time. It's not just a modern thing. How many of you would like to one day get a tattoo? Yeah, they're cool. It's addicting though. Once you get one, you got to keep going. It gets kind of expensive. But human beings, we know, at least 5,000 years ago, were tattooing. They found a guy in the Alps about 20 years ago now, and some skiers found this leg sticking out of the snow. They're like, oh, it was a dead skier. You got to call the authorities. So they called the authorities, and they came up, and they had pickaxes and stuff trying to get this body out of the ice, and then they realized, holy, this isn't a modern skier. He was wearing fur. He had animal bones on his body. He carried around a bow and an arrow, and the arrows were made out of stone, and they realized that this guy was a Stone Age guy. He was actually from the Neolithic Age, the New Stone Age, and he died about 5,000 years ago. And when they got him all out of the ice, he was like a human popsicle. They discovered he had tattoos all over his body. So tattooing is something that's old, and perhaps maybe older than cave art. We don't know for sure because skin doesn't last. We've got the cave art. We've got the Venus of Willendorf statue. Hubba, hubba, hubba. Yeah, that's something. She's only about this big. About 4.5 centimeters, about that big. You can actually see a reproduction of that in Chicago at the Field Museum. What? Why does she exist? What was she used for? Why do they call her a Venus figure? Why? Fertility. All right, she may be a goddess, a fertility goddess. Now, back in the day, living was very difficult. You didn't, if there was a flood, if there was a drought, you may not get food. And so fertility, because on that statue, she is a she. She doesn't have a face because what is emphasized are the parts of her body that are related to reproduction, which is fertility. But fertility also means getting enough food, having enough things grow. And if she were just one, people would be like, well, that's kind of weird. Some guy was walking around with that image. But they have found hundreds of these things all over Europe and Asia. All of them carved out of stone, some of them carved out of ivory. Maybe some were carved out of wood, but those deteriorate, earlier. So the ones we have are ones that last. So she's a fertility goddess. So that relates to what element of human culture? What element of human culture would a fertility goddess be? It's no different than if some of you have a Star of David, a crescent, or a crucifix. Religion. All right, so art could have been made for religious reasons. How about Stonehenge? You looked at Stonehenge, that's in England. Why did they make that? Why did they put up all of those rocks in that semicircle? And what did the little article call it? Called it a celestial what? Calendar. They didn't have watches, so it turns out that Stonehenge kind of aligns with the constellations. And it aligns with certain constellations at certain times of the year. So it may have been something to mark the passage of time, but again, it took a lot of effort, to carve these rocks and transport them hundreds of miles away. It may have been a sacred space because they found burial plots around Stonehenge. So it may have been also a religious thing. How about the Olmec heads? Where can you find the Olmec heads? Mexico. The Olmec were people that were before the Mayans, before the Mexica, the Aztecs. And what's unique about those heads, other than the fact that they're big and they're very heavy?
They're pretty detailed.
They are. And each one is different, so they think they represent actual leaders.
There's some in Easter.
Yeah, and on Easter Island too. Do we make statues for our political leaders?
No.
Yeah. You know, go to Washington, D.C., you can see Lincoln, you can see Jefferson, there's pictures of Washington all over. So government, and honoring government and showing government may be a motivation for art as well, but how about the cave art? Why did people go into caves, you think, and start drawing these images on the walls? Okay, lifestyle. They're drawing things that they see, all right? Maybe to provide something for the future, to tell stories. Maybe all of these reasons that early human beings had to make art are not too different from our reasons when you get right down to it. One of the things about art lasts, and people don't last. And one thing that we want to do is be remembered, and maybe that's no different than these people. I want to make something that's going to be remembered and something that's going to last. It's our one way to become immortal. All right, Elle's going to ring in less than a minute. Guys, thank you for being so attentive. Give your sheets to Ms. Gearman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel.